All right, I think that's my cue. So hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining us today to talk a little bit about financial aid. As you can see, my name is Anna Miller, and I have my colleague Ann Wink here with me as well. And we both work in the Central Office of Financial Aid here at the University of Michigan. And we're excited to talk with you today as part of this Getting to Know Michigan series, because helping students and families understand their financial aid eligibility and how to navigate the process is a huge part of our job and why we're here. So we're really happy to be talking with you. I'll be going over some basic information about how to maintain your financial aid eligibility. And Anne will be monitoring the Q&A feature for any questions that come up along the way. I know that there can be a lot of questions that come up about financial aid, but we do ask that your questions today are related to the presentation as much as possible. And I'll also share our office's contact information at the end, and you're welcome to follow up with us at any time today or any time in the future to talk more about any other specific financial aid questions that you think of that don't come up today. So let's go ahead and get started. A list here of some of the things that we're going to talk about. So first of all, hopefully you all have gotten your financial aid notice already. And on the notice, you probably saw some various types of financial aid being offered. So what this list really entails is kind of the what next, the things that you need to do to keep receiving your financial aid throughout your time here at the university. You can kind of think of this as the terms and conditions or the fine print. And there are four main topics that we'll go over today. So the first topic is Satisfactory Academic Progress, or SAP, as you may hear it called. There's lots of acronyms in financial aid. We'll talk about which credits count toward your total usage of financial aid. Next one might seem like a no-brainer, but we'll also talk about the importance of attending your classes, specifically from a financial aid perspective. And then finally, what happens if you have to withdraw. So there are three requirements that students have to maintain in order to keep meeting satisfactory academic progress. And these regulations are federal. So this isn't just at the institution, these are based on federal regulation. So if you have a friend or a sibling that's attending another school, or you've transferred here from another school, you'll probably find that the policies are very similar to what is happening at those other places. And the first requirement is that students are expected to maintain a cumulative GPA of at least a 2.0 or a C average. There is a slight variance in this depending on your grade level, but ultimately we're looking for that 2.0 expectation for when you graduate. Again, that is cumulative. The next component is that you have to complete at least 67% or 2/3 of the credits that you attempt. Well, what does that mean? So the primary way to attempt credits without earning them is to withdraw from a class. When you withdraw from a class, that class still shows up on your transcript. It shows up as a W, but it'll show that you didn't earn any credit for that class. Failing a class is also a way to create credits that you've attempted, that you went through the whole semester and you tried these credits, but you didn't earn them with a failing grade. And in that case, your GPA is also impacted if it's a failing grade. Your completion rate is calculated by dividing your earned credits by your attempted credits. So if you're signed up for 16 credits in the fall and 16 credits again in the winter, you have a nice full-time credit load each of those semesters. That's 32 attempted credits at the end of those 2 semesters. So 16 plus 16 is 32. And if you withdraw from one 4-credit class in one of those semesters, you'll have earned 28 of those credits. So you attempted 32, you earned 28. So if you take the 28 and divide it by 32, that gives you a completion rate of 87.5% at the end of your first year, and you would still be eligible for financial aid in this case. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about completion rate or PACE. And then finally, the third requirement is that you have to finish your program within 150% of the total credits that are required for the program. Now, the vast majority of bachelor's degrees here at U of M are 120 credits. So this rule means that you can use financial aid for up to 1.5 times that, which would be 180 credits. If your program has a slightly different credit requirement, some of them do, by just a few credits different, that will be reflected in your student record, the exact amount, and your max time frame will be specific to your program. One big exception that we see that falls into this category is engineering. We know that the engineering program is actually 128 credits to finish a bachelor's degree. And so in that case, if you take that 1.5 times the 128, then that gives you 192 as your maximum amount of credits that you can attempt for your program. So we check every student's cumulative GPA and completion rate once a year. Again, that keyword is cumulative. So we're looking at all of it that you've done here. We do it right after the winter semester has ended each year in May. And we look for students who are either getting close to or already at that 150% limit every semester. So it's actually 2 different checks. The check for your GPA and your completion rate is done once a year, but the getting close to your maximum credit usage happens at the end of each semester. So as part of both of these reviews, both the annual review and those single semester reviews, we send email notifications to all of our students who aren't meeting in at least one of these areas. And we will include in our email an option for you to submit an appeal. And the appeal is really your chance to explain any extenuating circumstances that might have prevented you from being successful, or if it's taking you a bit longer to finish your program, about why that might be, to try to ask for an extension of your time. You'll also need to meet with an academic advisor as part of that appeal process. And in addition to that being required when you submit the appeal, it's actually really beneficial to you academically as well, just to make sure that you're talking with your academic advisor and meeting with them if you are struggling in any way. So I'm going to take a moment to pause here, see if any questions have come up yet about anything we've covered so far.
No, Anna, nothing in the chat so far.
Good for now. Okay. Thanks, Anne. So like I said, we'll keep that up. So if you think of something, go ahead and drop it in whenever you think of it. So we get a lot of questions from students when we notify them about nearing the limit of their financial aid eligibility, of course. And one of the biggest concerns that we hear is, I didn't think that I had that many credits. How am I so close to the limit? What's going on? And what often causes this is transfer credits. We are federally required to include all transfer credits from other schools toward your total maximum of attempted credits. We also include AP credits. So when you did, your good work and took those AP tests and earned that college credit, that's counting towards your total financial aid usage as well. Sometimes it can be a pretty big dent depending on how many of those tests you took. We also count all enrollment that happens in the spring-summer semester. Even though it's an optional semester to attend, we still count those credits if you're taking them. We count credits from study abroad programs. Those get transferred back, and any of those count as well. And even credits that you paid for out of pocket. Even if there was a semester where you maybe didn't qualify for financial aid for some reason, or you opted not to use it, we are still counting those credits as well. So it truly is all of your credits that we're looking at in both of these reviews when we're going through this. These guidelines apply to both federal aid and to need-based grants that come from the university. The biggest one that we offer is called the University of Michigan grant, and that is held to the same requirements that we're talking about here. But I do want to make a distinction for any scholarships that you might be receiving. Scholarships will vary in terms of the length of time that they're available, just depends on the scholarship. So it's really important that you understand the terms of any scholarships that you're receiving. You should be able to find that information on the letter that you received that told you that you received the scholarship, but you can always reach out if you're not sure. If the scholarship was from an external source, from something in your community or something like that, you should follow up directly with the donor for any information about the terms if you're not sure. And if it's a scholarship from U of M, the terms can also still vary just depending on where it's actually coming from. There are probably literally hundreds of different scholarships, even right here through the university, that come from different departments on campus. A lot of them are offered directly through the departments. So that's always a good place to direct those questions. If it's a merit scholarship from your department, But there are also a handful of scholarships that come from our office. So again, you can always start with our office if you're not sure of who to contact or who your scholarship is coming from. If you want to try to get more information about it, or you misplaced your letter to go back and see the terms, we can help you sort out any of those things. So we're going to stop here for a moment again, see if any questions have come up.
Just two general questions, but I
Sure.
popped the answer in the chat, Anna.
Lovely. Thanks, Anne.
Mhm.
Okay, so next up is class attendance. And like I said before, to some of you, this might seem like something that goes without saying and doesn't need to be discussed, but you'd be surprised what comes up. And I think that a lot of students end up wishing that they had a better understanding of this when they started their classes here. And the first thing to note is that your financial aid notice is based on full-time enrollment. And full-time enrollment is 12 or more credits, 12 and up. Unfortunately, 11 credits doesn't count as full-time. You're only 1 credit away, but you are still shy of that 12. So if you're not actively taking at least 12 credits, then the financial aid you receive may be less than what is on your award notice. The next kind of guiding principle that we are required to follow, and again, this is based on federal regulation, is that it's not enough just to enroll in your classes. Financial aid is actually quote unquote earned, and that is earned by actually attending or participating in your classes. Now, this might not be attendance in the traditional sense, depending on the format of the class where you're physically going to the class, if it's online, for example. But participation can be shown in a lot of different ways. It can be shown by a graded quiz or assignment, a post on a message board, even an email correspondence that you've had one-on-one with the instructor. Any of those things are kind of considered academically related activity, and they do count as class participation. So for any student who receives a non-passing grade at the end of the semester, the instructor is required to report the last date that you participated in their class, and then we receive a report of all of those non-passing grades, and we'll review them at the end of the semester. If there was any non-attendance in any of those classes that brought you below that 12 credit threshold to still have met that full-time financial aid consideration, then we will have to actually reduce your financial aid retroactively. This isn't something that we enjoy doing by any means, and we understand that it really can cause a lot of stress and financial burden when this happens, particularly at the end of a semester. But as I mentioned before, it is federal regulation, so we really don't have a way around it. And that's why this really is very important. And moral of the story here is to participate in your class and to keep documentation if you end up withdrawing from the class, so that you have that in your back pocket if you ever want to try to dispute anything that was reported about your attendance in a class. Now, having said that, there are, of course, things that can happen that prevent you from being able to participate, and we understand that. Or maybe you've decided that the class just really isn't for you. And if that's the case, it is important to understand the financial aid implications of withdrawing. So we'll talk first about different scenarios from withdrawing from just 1, perhaps 2, really anything less than all of your classes, and the impacts of doing that on your financial aid. If you're thinking of withdrawing from a class or classes, but not all of your classes, the first question to ask yourself is whether it is before or after the add drop date for the semester. This is a date that's established by the registrar's office for each semester. It's published on their website. You can always call and ask as well if you're not sure. And it's typically a few weeks or so into each semester. If you withdraw from a class before the add drop date, and that brings you below the 12 credits, then your financial aid will be reduced accordingly at the time that it happens. There are some types of financial aid that will be what we call prorated or adjusted to different levels based on the number of credits that you take. For example, the majority of grants will be reduced to 3/4 of the amount if you're 3/4 time, and that's 9 through 11 credits, or reduce even further to half of the original amount if you're half time, which is 6 through 8 credits. If you drop below half time before that add drop date, you won't be eligible for any financial aid. However, there are a lot of scholarships that aren't even that nuanced, and they just require flat full-time enrollment, that 12 or more credits. So if you're ever thinking of dropping a class, even before the add drop date, it's always a good idea to contact our office first to talk through which types of financial aid would be reduced, and also which ones might be lost altogether if you do that. 12 credits really is that magic number, like I said. So if you were initially in 16 credits and you drop down to 12, there wouldn't be a change to your financial aid in that case. But it's any time that you're going to drop below that 12 credit threshold. Any classes that you withdraw from before the add drop date also will not be on your transcript. So that means that they will not impact your overall completion rate. If you withdraw from a class after the add drop date and you participated in that class up until you withdrew, there won't be any reduction to your financial aid. And again, that participation piece really is the key. So like I said, it's a good idea to hang on to that proof that you participated, keep a screenshot of something that you did, just in case there's a discrepancy. If you withdraw after the add drop date, the class also does show up on your transcript as a W in that case. And that means that it does impact your completion rate, since it would be considered credits that you've attempted, but you didn't earn. Now that's the scenario withdrawing from some, but not all of your classes. But withdrawing from all of your classes is its own kind of beast and has different things that happen when that occurs. And anytime that you fully withdraw at any point in the semester, whether it is before or after the add drop date, we are required to calculate how much of your financial aid was earned. Again, that's kind of the government's key stance on this, is how much was earned. And then we have to return the rest of that financial aid that you already got. We have to take it back and return it to the government. So we will initially receive notice of that withdrawal date from the registrar's office. But again, we're coming back to that importance of attending your class, because we're also going to follow up with you to confirm the last date that you actually participated in each class before withdrawing. And that's the date that really matters. So this process can create a balance that's due back to the university, since it involves returning some of that financial aid that was already received. Anytime you fully withdraw, you also need to submit an SAP appeal, like we talked about earlier, whenever you're ready to return. And with that appeal, you have to provide an explanation of why you withdrew. And again, there is a section for your academic advisor to complete. So you have to do that step of meeting with your academic advisor, just the same as if you need to appeal for other academic reasons. The appeal is needed even if you were in good academic standing up until you withdrew, or even if it's the spring term and you were maybe only registered in one three credit class, or 2 3-credit classes, and you withdrew. Even in that smaller term, you will still need to submit that appeal. Now, if that's the case, that type of scenario, having been in good standing, or having only had a couple of classes, those will certainly be considered when we're reviewing your appeal. But you do still need to actually submit the appeal in order to have that reconsideration for your future financial aid eligibility being reinstated. So I want to stop for a moment again here, see if there's any additional questions at this point.
Anna, I just popped an answer into the Q&A, but can you speak about the drop add deadline, typically being the 3rd week of each term? I think there's maybe some confusion around that.
Sure. So it's called the add drop date. And again, it's a date it's established by the registrar's office each semester. For the fall semester of this past year, I believe it was right around September 20th. Like I said, so it's normally right around that 3-week date. The exact date will vary a day or two each year, just depending on the calendar and where that falls. But it really is about 3 weeks in. And for financial aid purposes, the add drop date is really where we kind of lock in your financial aid eligibility. That's the importance of it for financial aid. For registrar's purposes, that add drop date determines whether or not you can have your tuition given back, basically. If you drop classes before that add drop date, then on the registrar side of things, that means that your tuition will come off of your bill. Whereas if you don't drop the classes until after that date, then you'll be still charged either partial or full tuition for that class, depending on even farther, kind of how much farther from that date it falls. So it's used in different ways. Like I said, it's used in financial aid as the date that we lock in your financial aid eligibility, but also used by the registrar to determine whether or not there can be any tuition given back to you. Does that help answer the question? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's great. Thanks, Anna.
Good, thanks. So I know that we covered a lot of information here in a pretty short amount of time, and this is really just kind of a really high level explanation. There's certainly a lot more detail that can come up and nuance with different situations that occur. But it really is so important to have this information ahead of time in order to make sure that you have a successful academic journey here at the university. You know, this is the type of rainy day information that you may, never think to ask about until it comes up or has already happened. And hopefully you'll never need to have this information, but it really is crucial to understand if, life happens and you do have something come up along the way. And you either aren't able to participate in classes or have to withdraw. So we certainly do see that. Please always feel free to reach out to us. You can see our office's contact information is here on the screen. Reach out anytime. We realize that obviously things like dropping classes and having to submit appeals can be stressful, but there can be other financial aid questions too that come up, and that's perfectly normal. And that's what we're here for. So please do reach out anytime. I see you can email us, give us a call. You can stop by for drop-in advising, and we're happy to help. Appreciate you all joining today. Are there any other questions that anybody has thought of? All right, hearing none. Thank you all again. We really appreciate you joining today. Don't hesitate to contact us. Like I said, that's why we're here. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you all very much.